Call me idealistic, but I think we can do better in healthcare. See, here's a quick overview. The United States spends 450% more in healthcare than the military each year. Yet we rank 37th in overall health. Opioids are the #1 cause of death for men and women under 50, and a baby is born every 26 minutes addicted to opioids. We consume 90% of all the opioids in the world, yet we're 5% of the world's population, and our healthcare system ranks 72nd as an effective healthcare system. We're 11th out of 11 of the wealthiest nations in healthcare, and 34th in life expectancy, 34th in infant mortality, 48th in lowest maternal mortality, and 70% of Americans take a prescription drug. 25%, 1 in 4 kids are on a prescription med, and 25% of women are on antidepressants. 1 in 13 kids are on a psychiatric med, and 1% of children are on psychiatric meds. And if you count prediabetes and obesity, and nearly 75% of Americans are living on at least one drug and one chronic disease, and we're getting the rate worse at a rate of 1.6 million per year. Sounds pretty bleak, doesn't it? Well, it's time for a new model of a hospital, a new approach. See, imagine a natural hospital. A hospital that actually cared for people without medications, that provided incredible nutritional support, provided natural treatment for those that were looking for non-drug approaches, that provided care for the body, the mind, and the spirit. Imagine a hospital that graded itself by doing less surgery, less tests, less C-sections, less prescriptions, and less intervention. Imagine a place that helped you better understand your role in health and healing. Imagine a place that understood your body was divinely created and is designed to heal, and approached health from a paradigm that says there are natural approaches to cancer, heart disease, pain, instead of the conventional approach. I know some people would have no interest in this model, but I know millions would. Millions of people are looking for different options, non-drug, non-surgery, the people that want a holistic approach. Imagine a hospital, the one that operated like this. And I'm reminded of a scene in Field of Dreams that says, build it and they will come. It's time for a new model, a new approach. The people deserve it. You deserve it. Let's truly heal healthcare. Would you come? Because if you end up in an unnatural hospital, Institute for Healthcare Improvement estimates that 15 million incidents of medical harm occur in these unnatural U.S. hospitals each year. This estimate of overall national harm is based on their expectations that patients experience, which reveals that between 40 to 50 incidents of harm occur for every 100 times somebody goes into a hospital. With 37 million admissions in the United States every year, that equals 15 million harm events. That's a harm event, or 40,000 incidents of harm that occur in U.S. hospitals every single day. Do you understand that? The truth is that medical doctors can do one of two things. They can give you drugs, and if that doesn't work, or it doesn't kill you first, then they can do surgery, where there's now a 50% chance of injury. 50% of all hospital admissions end up in a mistake. So if somebody isn't under the care in a maximized living office, they end up in this system, and it's the #1 leading cause of death. Do you know this? This is the #1 purpose of the class tonight, is to educate you on the principle of health and healing, and why you need to engage in this natural hospital for the rest of your life. The purpose of tonight is to wake you up to the reality of what's been happening, that you think that this is not going to be you, and it's my job to show you that it's going to be you. It's going to be your children, and it's going to be everyone you know if they're not living a max living life.
I always want to have the aisle to run up here. All right, so my wife thought I was a little crazy because I just put up a camera and just started talking. She's like, "Are you gonna come to bed?" And I said, "In a second. I just have to get something off my chest." And when you start looking at the statistics in that manner, when you really look at it in its totality, it's actually a little alarming. I mean, I hope it's alarming to you, because when you start looking, you get a 1 in 2 chance if you go into a hospital that there's going to be a harm event that occurs to you. And the crazy thing is that when we really look statistically, the beautiful thing is that when they do research, they don't know what the upper limit on our lifespan should be. Just because somebody lived to 122, she died in 97. Okay, why can't that be us? We look at Discover Magazine. They actually did the research, and they said, look, the first 150-year-old person's already been born. Who is it? Who is that person? Is it you? Is it me? Do we know who that is? Is it our grandchildren? See, the thing is that we've gotten so used to just like the average. Does that make sense? We've gotten so used to, hey, we make it to 70 and we're in good shape. We're making it to 80. We're still alive. You know, high five, and everything's going to be great there. And then we get to 90. Oh my gosh. Well, 90 is something special. And then 100. Well, and I ask people all the time in doctor's report. I ask them. I said, do you want to live to 100? And how many people raise their hand? Almost none of them. Almost none of them, because they're afraid of it. They're literally afraid of living to 100 because they didn't plan on living to 100 when they were first born there. And tonight my whole job is about taking the fear away from it. It's about giving a plan. It's about being realistic and looking at where we are and where to be able to give you some key tools there. Now, one of the interesting things is that I actually read a research study, and they actually were able to predict, they studied people in their 20s, and this is a 50-year study, and they studied people in their 20s, and then they actually were able to predict who was going to die first. And you know how they did that? They asked the people closest to them. They said, do you think this person's going to live a long life or a healthy life? And they found they were actually able to be much more specific in predicting by asking their spouse. See, what they find is that when they compared these people and they looked at their all their tests, and they were trying to see, looking at the test, who was going to live the longest, the people that just know, the people around you, and actually know better than the actual test if you're going to live a long, healthy life. And so the thing is if you have questions, just ask the person sitting to the right or left of you. Does that make sense? They're going to be able to tell you and probably give you a better answer than even your doctor can give you there. So that's about taking responsibility, and what they see is they see what other people don't see. They see the hidden things. They see the lifestyle things that we know that are contributing to it. In fact, they say that if you actually take smoking away and you actually exercise, you have a pretty good opportunity to live to 90. That's basically the big thing. If you don't smoke and you exercise on a regular basis, you're probably going to make it to 90 years old. Isn't that interesting? Like, we're like, what? We have to do all this stuff? No, like just don't do those two things. Don't smoke and start exercising right now. In fact, they find that when's the best time to start? Well, I'm 50 years old or I'm 70 years old. They actually find out that people that actually start eating healthy and doing healthy things when they're in their 70s actually perform just as well as people that have been doing it their whole life. So if that's where we're at, don't give up right now, because we're just getting started. So one of the things that I wanted to do is, you guys might not have, if some of you might not know me, this is me in about, well, I figured in 2044, I had to use one of those cool little aging apps there. So I figure a lot of times we get stuck where we are. So I want to tell you what 2044 looks like to me. So 2044, I'll be in practice for 50 years. I'll have provided, at this rate, about 1.5 million adjustments to over 31,000 mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, famous athletes, celebrities, and your neighbors there. I'll have trained over 60 doctors that are serving over 50,000 patients a week. Just so you know, I'm not retiring until I get that was one of my major goals, was to make sure that I had trained enough people so that we could be serving 50,000 people a week, because I thought that was a small town. I'll be 74 years old, walk my daughter down the aisle, and I will have cried at my son's wedding without him seeing. And I will have adjusted each of my grandchildren at birth, and my family is going to continue to live the lifestyle. See, it's not, when I see that, it's a compelling vision for me, because I see it so clearly. That's what I see my life at. That's why I do what I do. When I wake up in the morning, it's not that I'm eating for emotion, I'm eating for my future. And in fact, one of the best things as a dad that happened to me the other day, my daughter called me and she goes, I finally figured it out, Dad. I'm like, thank goodness, right? Like, you have your kid in college, and you're like, oh good, please tell me what you figured out. She goes, I figured out that I eat today for how I want to feel tomorrow. I'm like, I told you that every day growing up, right? and so if I'm feeling tired today, well, that's because of what I did yesterday. So if I want to have more energy tomorrow, I have to change what I do today. I'm like, that's great. So I figured if I'm feeling tired today, I need to exercise today so I'll have more energy tomorrow. And what I used to do would be to go get coffee, or to go eat something to stimulate me so I'd feel better today. She goes, I write off today and I learn my lesson so that I feel better today. And that's a much better plan. So that's from my 19-year-old daughter. It took 19 years for her to figure it out, but I just wanted to pass that along to you guys. So this is our mission right here, and this is one of my favorite things. This is my team of champions after we did we started our Olympic surge workout out there. But really, the main thing I need you to understand is my mission is it's not about just coming here and adjusting people. My mission is that to remind you, because we've been lied to for so long. We've been lied to for so long. The lie is that we're designed to break down. We're designed to get old. We're designed to be fragile. But there is a truth that everything that you ever need, love, life, health, and happiness, is on the inside of you. You can't find it. You can't buy it. You can't, you can't get it on Amazon Prime. It's got to come from the inside of there. And our mission is to transform lives. It's a little bit every single time, a little bit every single day to be able to start transforming lives, moving people in a direction there by unleashing that power that lies within you. And the only way that we do it is through the 5 essentials. And really, I was talking with Dr. Hardick, who wrote Align Your Health, and we were kind of recapping back when we came up with the 5 essentials, and we were literally sitting down there like, okay, we want to transform health. How do we do it? And we're like, okay. And so we had all this research. And we're like, okay, let's get it simple. Like we have, and we came up with the 5 essentials there. And really, what basically the 5 essentials are, and we'll go through it in a second. But we do this every single day through our passion and commitment. And that's the thing, is we're super committed, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we do it one person at a time. When I'm adjusting you, I don't adjust 10 people at a time. I adjust one person at a time. When we're talking, it's one person at a time. Because that's my goal every single day. It's just one more person gets a little bit better. And if that person gets a little bit better, then I'm looking for the next one. Are you it? Are you it? Are you it? Are you it? And that's why we keep asking. Like we have the detox class. I guarantee you, over the next month, the detox makeover coming up here, probably going to ask you like 1,000 times. Just get used to it until you say yes. To come to it, because we're putting it on because it's for you there. And so really what I want you to understand is these are what the 5 essentials are. And really the main thing is when we looked at the nervous system, because think about it, like if we're going to be healthy, and it's not lifespan that we're concerned about, it's health span. There's a difference between health span and lifespan. You can have a short lifespan if you have a short health span, but if you have a long health span, you're always going to have a long lifespan. And that's the difference. A lot of our procedures and things that we do, they're short-term gains because we're just trying to eke that extra mile out. You know, it's like when you have that 1% battery on your iPhone, you're like shutting everything off. You're like, look, I got it to last like an extra half hour. But we're talking about plugging into the power to make sure that you don't have to worry about shutting down your Bluetooth and your wireless and your screens, the screen dimness there. And so really we got to figure out what health is, and health is one thing and one thing only. It's just function. Dorland's Medical Dictionary says that when your body's functioning at 100%, you're 100% healthy. That's why the core chiropractic is the #1. We actually moved it from #2 to #1, and the reason being is that people can't have a healthy mindset if their nervous system's not working right, because that's how you perceive the world, that's how you experience the world, that's how you respond to the world. That's what regulates your hormones, that's what regulates your digestion. I could go give you the best food in the world, and if you have pressure on the nerves that's going to the digestive organs, it's not going to work right. You're not going to be able to absorb that. If you have somebody's like, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to have a calm exterior, and I'm not going to stress anymore. Well, how we experience stress is through our nervous system. So that's why the core chiropractic is the #1 thing. And the people always ask me, like, I just had a lady today, she's 76 years old. She came in with a shoulder problem, we adjusted her and her shoulder problem went away. And she's like, wow, that's really amazing. I'm like, well, it wasn't a shoulder problem. She goes, well, when did it start? I said, probably when you were born. And think about that. Goodman did a study in which they looked at 1,000 consecutive children, and they found that 95% of those children actually had upper cervical damage in the birth process. And watch this. So this is the birth process right here. This is actually a C-section because we think it's safe, right? Watch the baby's neck right here. Right? Imagine you were laying on the couch and somebody was grabbing you and twisting and pulling. Right there. That's the first thing that happens in that child's life there, right? And so what I want you to think about is this, is that's traumatic. But that's considered a safe procedure. It's considered easier than the normal birthing process there. So we have to pull the baby down because we're pushing a bowling ball uphill and we're violating all the laws of the birthing process. Then we have next thing you know, we have these kids that are subluxated and they've never had their spines checked. In fact, Dr. Anagi said that if we were to actually check every single child at birth, we would actually prevent the permanent degenerative neurologic changes there. So that's why you'll see kids here. Most of the kids don't have problems, and that's what our job is, to keep it there. Then we talk about nutrition, because you got to have the food to be able to power the system there. And then we talk about exercise. You got to be able to move. We talk about mindset, because how you think is, if I was to ask you guys, do you know one thing that you could do that would forever change your health, that you could literally leave here right now, and if you actually finally did it, that you'd actually be healthier, right? And everybody can raise their hand. Like, everybody knows one thing that they should be doing that they're not doing, right? And so that's the thing, is the mindset there. And so we need to look at our mindset, how we deal with stress, how we take care of our nervous system, how we exercise. These are all things that we add. And then the problem is that in the world that we live in right now, we have 600 million pounds of pesticides being produced every single year. That's crazy. They look at, when they actually do swabs of floors of people's houses, and they find that 78% of the floors actually had chemicals on the floors that have been banned for 20 years or more on their floors of their house. That's crazy. Like, how can a chemical that's been banned for 20 years be in your house and over 4 out of 5 people's houses there? So right now, seniors over 30. The average senior right now fills 35 different prescriptions, and it's not unusual to have a senior. Over 20% of seniors right now are taking 30 or more medications on a daily basis. That's toxicity. Do you understand? Like, nobody ever gets healthy taking 30 different medications on a regular basis. So the body was never designed for toxins. That's why it's the only one that we've removed. It's maximize your nervous system, maximize your mind, maximize your nutrition, maximize your exercise. Those are all things you do to support your health. And then the last one is minimize toxins. It's the only minimized one there. So the challenge is despite what we're spending, we're beating out our defense, the contractors here on healthcare there. Americans are in the worst health of pretty much any industrialized nation in the world. And when we understand that, we can understand that we either take the plan that everybody else is doing and we end up where everybody else is, or we just take a different plan there. And so what I want you to see is, I always look at, okay, we're last in the world of all the industrialized nations. And in fact, we're 72nd in the world now. A few years ago, we were 70th, now we're 72nd. So we're losing ground. In fact, the last 2 years, our life expectancy has actually been going down in the United States. It's the first time that it hasn't been going up. Now it's going down. We used to blame life expectancy on the infant mortality. Well, we do have the #1 infant mortality rate of all the industrialized nations, but our life expectancy is actually shrinking. So my feeling is, if I was an athlete and I wanted to have a coach to make me great in something, I'm going to study the greatest players out there. Does that make sense? I'm going to get the best coaches. And so what I wanted to do is, the National Geographic, they actually wrote a book called Blue Zones. And what they did is they sent people out into the world, and they went to go see where the healthiest people out there are. Well, one of the people they actually looked at were the Hunsons. The problem is they were actually this group where the vision issues were almost non-existent, hearing issues were non-existent. When they actually looked at heart disease, almost completely non-existent. Then that's when they discovered them about 40 years ago. Unfortunately, that's not the case now, because they now have the westernized lifestyle, and now they have the westernized life expectancy there. So they took them out of actually the blue zones. They're not even a blue zone anymore there. But when we look at Greece is kind of an interesting thing. If you're from Greece, on average, you're going to live about 8 years longer. Think of what you could do with another 8 years of good, healthy life there. I mean, 8 years. Like, think about what you've done in the last 8 years of your life. There's a lot that's happened. Like, 8 years ago was 2010. Like, that's a long time ago if you think about it. Well, the thing is that one of the interesting things is they have their Mediterranean diet, but most of them, they get their food, they garden their own food there. It's all, they don't eat a lot of GMOs, they go out into their garden. And in fact, what's really interesting in Greece, when you tell somebody that you went out to dinner, the one thing that they don't ask, they don't say, where did you go first? They ask, who did you go with first? They ask, who did you go with, then where did you go? And what they find, and this is a very interesting thing, when they study people and they look at predictors of mortality, they find that people that have a hobby and do a hobby more than 2 hours a day, just their mortality rate goes down 21%. But what they also find is that actually interacting and talking with another human being, like having a friendship, interacting with people, and like having dinner with somebody is actually, you always hear about doing crossword puzzles to prevent dementia. They actually find out it's actually better talking with people than actually doing a crossword puzzle. In fact, they find that people that interact with people on a social basis, not a business basis, but on a social basis, they have 5 times more neurons in their brain than people that don't. Kind of fascinating, and that's kind of what we're designed for. So when we start looking at these societies, it's we as a society are becoming more and more isolated. We have more and more FaceTime. Like we have people live online right now, but they're not here right now, right? They're not interacting with another human being. They're just sitting on the phone. We text people rather than call people. And when we call people, we do that so we don't have to see them. And so what we really want to look at is how can we interact? How can we create more community like the Greeks do? And second thing that we can look at is, now you don't have to have the hat, okay? You don't have to have the hat. But in Sardinia, they actually have the highest concentration of centurion men, meaning that the men that live over 100 years old. Their diets they're low in protein. They don't have these high protein diets like we do in the United States. They have a small, like 20 to 30% of their diet is actually protein. And they don't always have, it's not always meat. They're not eating like a big beefsteak with every meal. They have a lot of beans and legumes and things along those lines. But they also do have meat there. But what's interesting about the Sardinians, they actually walk. They literally walk every single day, and we'll talk about this later about exercise, how profound that can be. But the Sardinian men will actually walk 10 to 15 miles a day at times, back and forth to go see their friends so they can socialize there. It's a constant thing, and so now we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much traffic on the road. Well, just get on your bicycle and go see somebody. Get out there and walk to socialize there. We also look at the Okinawan women. In Okinawa, they have the highest concentration of centurion women. In fact, as a population, they have the highest concentration of people over 100, and it's not going down. It's continuing to climb, the percentage of people. They're just getting older and older there. Isn't that amazing? Like, so here we are, we're going younger and younger as we die, and they're going older and older. They eat their fish, they eat raw vegetable, they eat their vegetables, they eat seaweed, which the seaweed is fantastic because it has a tremendous amount of antioxidants in there. Their lifestyle and their diet actually is there to be able to support their health rather than break it down. And in fact, you're expected to go pick your own fruit from the trees and be up on a ladder when you're in your 90s. You're supposed to be serving the people that are centurions when you're in your 90s, not having to sit there on your couch on your Barco lounger like this for 8 hours a day because you're 90 years old. 90 years old is not an excuse in Okinawa. And so what we have to do is raise our standards, and what we do is when we study other people, and what I would suggest is stop talking to sick people, start studying people that are healthy. Start looking at the oldest people that you know and that are the happiest people that you know. And study what they do. Study how they spend their time there. So the big thing is it comes to mindset. And our mindset is the number one predictor if we're going to live a long, healthy life, because it's going to determine the actions that we take. It's going to determine how we associate. In fact, when they actually look at churchgoers, they find that people that go to church once a week, well, actually, their mortality rate goes down 33% compared to people that don't go to church at all. And maybe it's the socializing, maybe it's the time they spend together. People that go to church infrequently actually still get a benefit because their actually mortality rate goes down 13%. So at least showing up sometimes is better than not showing up at all. But a lot of it is that the faith and the stress and all the mindset of where they come from on that place there. So that's such a beautiful thing. But we also look at the mindset. We talk about hobbies. We talk about socialization. We talk about and we talk about stress. And one of the things is that one of the beautiful thing is, as you guys know, like when I fell and I broke my ribs, I was in a stressed state, as you can imagine. I literally landed on my feet, fell down on my face, and I sat up like that. And I'm like, what am I going to do Monday, right? Like, who's going to take care of my people? And then when I didn't have anything. And so I was able to say, Lord, you're just going to have to take this one on this. And next thing you know, somebody comes in and takes over my practice on Monday, that just a random, like a chiropractor that I knew, that she's like, oh yeah, I'll be there on Monday and Tuesday. And somebody else shows up, and then Dr. Sherry shows up, and he says, oh, I'll just move my practice over there until you're better. But what was interesting, the only thing that really changed it, and this could be something that could completely change your life, is one of my best friends called me and he said, TJ, and I was like, you know, if, like you hurt yourself, somebody calls like, how you doing? You're like, wah, 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 like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? I was like going on and on and on. And he said, TJ, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens for you. And so what it did is it changed my perspective, where I realized that, you know, I got so focused here that I didn't take that 60,000 foot view. So, you know, sometimes I have, you know, like, and I started looking with expectancy of how this was going to happen for me, how things were going to happen. Completely changed my experience. One of the best experiences of my life. It's kind of like childbirth. I don't want to go back through it anytime soon, but like I would never give it up once I've done it. So mindset is one of our biggest things, and if you can work on your mindset and really start to see the possibilities, start to get that vision, okay, I'm going to live to 115. Start making your plans that I'm going to live to 113. Start thinking about where are we going to live when we're 115 or 120 years old. You know, that's what the mindset is, because then you'll take certain actions. You know, you won't take today actions like my daughter was saying, like I want to feel good today. Once you realize that if I want to feel good today, I do different things today for how I'm going to feel tomorrow. So really, the big thing is happiness is an action. And I just really, my favorite thing is this slide right here, is laughter. What they found is when they studied people that are actually, with longevity, the people that laugh the most live the longest. It's true. Like consistently, study after study. You know, you look at like Patch Adams and, you know, like his whole thing was about, you know, laughter. Norm Shealy's laughter is the best medicine, right? What they find is that, and I think Norm Shealy actually laughed his way away from stage 4 cancer. They said that he was going to die, and he's like, well, I'm just going to have to laugh about that, and he literally laughed himself into health there. See, like when you laugh, what it does is it creates a whole completely different cascade of hormones there. And your body can only be in 1 or 2 places at a time. It can be in a place of fear, or it can be in a place of growth. It can be in a place of love, or it can be in a place of protection there. Like you can't have the greatest relationship of all times when you're afraid that that person's going to leave you. Like you can't like be all half in or half out there. You got to be all in. So what they find is that when you're laughing, it's hard to be depressed when you're laughing. It's hard to have stress when you're laughing there. So find, I don't know, Three Stooges movies. I don't think they're funny, but find something that makes you laugh. But just even if you can't, just like laugh alone in the car, and somebody will think you're listening to Sirius there or something. But this is the big thing. What they find though, and that is service. People that contribute and back to others. What they find is it takes their worldview off of themselves. And what happens is sometimes our worldview just gets so crushing, it gets so heavy, and it breaks us down. What they find is that they have lower mortality rates. The higher your volunteer rate is the higher longevity. Because what happens is you have a purpose. See, when somebody has a purpose just to get through the day, that's one thing, but I've never met some of the oldest people I know. They're the ones that, like, I have one of our patients that's a flight attendant. And they have the #1 person at American Airlines. I think she's like 86 years old. She's still flying. And she's still working as a flight attendant. But some of the oldest people I know, they're serving at churches, right? They're the lectors. They're up there, you know, helping in the nursery there. They have a purpose. I had one lady that she was with us for almost a decade and a half, and she passed away recently, but she used to just take care of my plants. That was like her purpose. Like it was just to take care of the plants. Now you notice there's not a lot of plants around here. We'll get them back. So anybody who wants to take care of plants, please let me know. But really, the other thing is our daily activity. The higher your activity, the lower your Alzheimer's risk. And I talked about this a little bit ago when we did this in the brain class. But I just want to rehash this. That right now, and this is an important thing, is that 1 in 2 people at 85 right now actually have Alzheimer's right now. They just don't remember their own name. And actually 1 in 10 people at 65 actually have the beginning of Alzheimer's. They're expecting by 2040, so do the math, that by 2040, that 1 in 2 people at the age of 65 will actually have Alzheimer's at the rates that it's progressing right now. That's 1 in 2 people. So if you take my age right now and I add 20 years on there, if I don't do something, I have a 1 in 2 chance of being a statistic. And so what we find is that my father had Alzheimer's, my father had cancer, my father had 2 heart attacks, my father died from cancer. When they did the autopsy, they said his brain was equal to that of an 80-year-old man. He was 56 years old. The thing about Alzheimer's is very fascinating is by the time you feel symptoms, it means that it's actually been there for up to 10 years. Like it's there for 10 years and it's still treatable at that time, it's still preventable. And so even something as simple, and we'll talk about, like we always talk about omega-3s, you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 600%. 600%. Find me a medication out there that says they'll reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by 600% just by having your omega-3 to omega-6 ratios checked. It's simple. Having them in the 2-to-1 ratio there. So if you're not taking omega-3s, the omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They'll reduce your risk of heart disease. Omega-3s work for brain function. If you're having hormonal issues, omega-3s work for that. Anytime that you have a deficiency of anything in your body, there is going to be disease or a disease process that's in place there. So typically for myself, I take between 4 and 6 grams of omega-3s a day, just because I don't want that to be my future there. I'm acutely aware of it, and I do things like that on a regular basis. That's why I exercise. I actually don't exercise because I like it. Like I never wake up in the morning and be like, oh, today's the day I get to exercise. Awesome. No, I'm like, I'm going to exercise because A, I have people and I have my purpose to take care of this office, but I want to make sure that I don't have a heart attack. I want to make sure that I don't have cancer. I want to make sure that I don't have Alzheimer's there. So nutrition, and this is the big thing. So we talked about mindset. But nutrition is a big one, and we get so crazy on nutrition. Like literally and most people don't understand nutrition in a common sense way. We're looking for the quick fix, right? You know, you have all the different diets that are out there, and you try this, and then this is a great one. I'm going to simplify it. It's called whole food. Like literally, like it's not Whole Foods. Like Whole Foods isn't necessarily healthy, but whole food, like actually real food that was actually grown somewhere, that was actually alive recently. See, there's foods by man and there's foods by God. Anytime we eat foods by man, it's going to be destructive. Our body isn't designed to recognize it. It's not going to process it the same way as when we do whole foods. And we're going to talk about this because a lot of times the big thing is that we look at consistently through all the blue zones, the one commonality. And some cultures have to walk a lot. They don't have to walk a lot in Okinawa. But the one common thing they all have is they all eat whole foods on a regular basis. They don't eat processed foods. And the cultures that used to be blue zones, that are taken away from the blue zones, they actually brought in the Western diets of processed foods there. So this is what, let me move this one right here. This is the core plan that we teach, and it's in Align Your Health, which is the new version of the old Maximize Living Nutrition Plan book. We just literally took it and put it on steroids to really bump up the concentration to address issues such as like gluten and GMOs that weren't even present when we wrote that book the first time. But what we talk about is there's really 3 things that we want to do. And the thing is that we want to eat more healthy fats, and we've been told for so long that we shouldn't eat fat because all fat's bad. But the problem is your nervous system's made up of fat. So if you're not eating fats, then all of a sudden, how does your nervous system build it? Your hormones are all made of fat. If you're not eating good, healthy fats, how do you create hormones there? Your brain's made of fat. How do you actually have a healthy brain if you're not eating fat? And so if you look back since the Framingham study where they said, don't eat fat, keep a low-fat diet, and you'll be healthy. Well, we actually found that 40 years later that we're actually wrong and that it costed millions of lives there. The problem is that it's not fat that's the problem. It's rancid fat that's the problem. So when we look at the canola oil, the corn oils, the soybean oils, the oils that you have in your cabinet and you smell it and you're like, oh, that smells funny. Like if any of your oils smell funny or taste funny, get rid of them. Because they're not designed to be there like the Morton salt. You know, like that Morton salt that you inherit from your grandmother, that one big container that you've had like for 4 generations that you passed down. It's the exact same thing. You're like, how long have we had this? I don't know. Great grandma gave it to us. But the point is that our fats aren't supposed to be there sitting in a jar on a regular basis. So really what, we have all this on the website there, and I have a lot of these resources there. But the first thing that I always tell people to do in making any changes is to change your fats. That's the one thing that we have to do, is just making sure that we have the right type of fats. Avocados, we look at on our nuts, and just like the good fatty fishes there. And then, in fact, if you eat meat, then that's fine too. But just make sure it's healthy meat, because you're only as healthy as what you ate. So if you eat bad meat, you can't undo the bioaccumulation of all the toxins there. So you have to know the source of your food. Like, I actually go out of my way to find the source of our meats there. Second thing is, and that's when we get into our proteins there. Protein is an incredibly important thing. There's really two sources of energy in your body, okay? The one is carbohydrates and one is fat. Those are the only two sources. So like, when you remember the old Atkins diet, just eat a lot of protein and you're going to be fine. Protein is really only there as a backup system. That's why if you look at the concentration camps, when they didn't feed them, the body would eat the protein, would actually eat its own muscle there, and then they would wither away. So when people have a high protein diet, it's highly acidic, it's hard on the kidneys, it creates a lot of inflammation within the body there. So that's why you look at Dr. Atkins, he didn't live a long, healthy life. He ended up dying of a heart attack, right? And so protein is actually designed to rebuild your body. So the type of protein that you put into your body will determine the tools that are available for your body to rebuild. And the main thing we have to remember is that every single day our body is breaking down. Like, you go to the gym, you destroyed muscles, and then you have to have the protein in there to rebuild those muscles. You go for a walk, just the mere fact of going for a walk broke your body down. It needs to have the good nutrients to be able to support it there. So if you're going to have a steak, for goodness sake, don't take it like, super well done, cardboard style, because you've destroyed all the good proteins in there. Obviously try to move to if you're going to cook it, try to have it not as well done there. If you're going to have your fish, you don't have to cook it until it breaks off like beef jerky. Beef jerky, by the way, is not a healthy regular source of protein for you. It tastes good though, I really like it. But it's not like a key component of your diet. We want to think whole foods there. Beans, legumes, there's so many sources of proteins. And what I want you to do is I want you to start an investigative process of looking at what kind of fats, what kind of proteins there, and what kind of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not bad. They've been demonized, but the difference is that we consume 160 pounds of sugar per year. And in fact, if processed foods were a food group, they would be the #1 food group consumed in the United States right now. And there's not even a food category for it. Does that make sense? Like, there's not even not even a protein, carbohydrate, or a fat. It's just processed food, because your body doesn't even recognize it there. So that's the core plan where we want most people to live on there. Now, if somebody has a health issue, if they're still on medications, if they're fighting something, if they're trying to lose weight, if they have the aches and pains there, if they have the inflammation, if they're fighting cancer, what we really want to do is to move on to the advanced plan. And this is detailed in the book, but the main thing that I want you to think about is we need to shift our type of energy. We need to move away from the carbohydrates. We want to eliminate all the grains that we possibly can, and even the fruit. And the biggest thing that people tell me is they're like, oh my gosh, but fruit is good. Not all the time. Your body wasn't designed to handle that much fruit. In my backyard, and you've heard me talk about this, but I have a blackberry bush in my backyard. It's my favorite time of year in about a month. For a week, I'll get blackberries. And then they're gone, because I eat them all. And it doesn't come back for a whole nother year. That's how it used to be. If you had an orange tree in your yard, you'd have oranges at a certain season, and then you wouldn't have oranges for the rest of the year. Our body wasn't designed to be exposed to apples 24/7, 365 days a year. We're not designed to have fruit in the winter. We have to actually ship it in there. So the fruit has so much sugar in it, and the high concentration of the fruit really creates an inflammatory process. The high sugar actually interferes with vitamin C receptors there. High sugar creates more inflammation. High sugar feeds cancer. High sugar actually creates more oxidation, which causes cells to age prematurely there. So that's why if we have a health issue, we want to eliminate the grains that turn into sugar, right? We also want to reduce the fruit, and any white powder, any white sugar. Don't ask me about cane sugar. Don't ask me about brown sugar. Don't ask me about molasses or honey. We need to eliminate all those sugars if we want to shift our metabolism. I really like, when we're in this phase, to have what we call a 60-30-10 ratio there. So if we bring up our fat ratios to about 60% of energy there, because you'll have a clean burn. We want to get our proteins to about 30% of our calories, and our carbohydrates to about 10. Now, for you to eat like 10% of your calories of vegetables, That's a lot of vegetables. You're going to have a big, huge plate of vegetables there. I promise you won't be full there. And so people a lot of times are like, well, how do I get my calories in there? Well, first of all, here's the rule for eating. Stop eating when you're full. Okay, like you don't have to micromanage this thing. Your brain will tell you. But the other thing is, that's why if you think about these people that they go out on a social event to actually eat, what they find is that it takes 20 minutes for your brain to actually send the full signal to you. That's why when on Thanksgiving, what do? We're like, oh, I've been waiting all day, and we just power that first plate. And we're like, oh, seconds, and next thing you know, like we work all day for this one meal, and next thing you know, we have like 2 or 3 plates into us, and we're like, oh, I shouldn't have had that last one after we eat the pie. So if we can actually take our time to eat, spend about half an hour eating there. Take the smaller bites, and what you'll find is your body will actually tell you when it's full and when it's not full there. All right. This is one thing I'm going to really talk about, and there's a lot of questions on supplements. The worst type of supplement that you take is a cheap supplement. And the reason being is many of them are created in a lab. Just because there's, it says vitamin C, it's not that it's bioavailable, it's not that it's absorbable there. And so many times some of these supplements can become toxic. In fact, you can actually run a test. You can take a styrofoam cup, and you can put your omega-3 on the styrofoam cup. And if it eats through that, that means that you're basically that it's a rancid oil, and you're like a rancid omega-3 there. So my suggestion to you is when you are looking for your supplements, don't buy your supplements where you buy your drugs. Okay? Don't buy your supplements where they sell potato chips. Because there's a different standard, and that's why that's the only reason why I carry anything in the office, because it's professional grade. It's a professional grade that we know that not all supplements are created equal, and so a lot of times somebody will bring it in. They're like, yeah, I was at Costco the other day and I got this big thing of omega-3s, and I'm like, look at the concentration of omega-3s. It's not even enough to have make an impact. So if you guys have questions about your supplements, bring them in. Bring in the bag, or just take a picture of all of them, and we'll be more than happy to look at them over there for you. But just the one thing, if you're going to invest in supplements, and really health is an investment, don't go cheap on it. I'd rather have you not take a supplement than take a supplement that is toxic to you. And there are supplements that are toxic. The other thing is make sure that your supplements are always from whole food stuff. They're actually made for something that was actually a living, not in a lab there. All right. So fitness. This is one of actually my favorite ones. And what was interesting is that who would like to have a reduction in mortality of about 55%? So what they found is that the people that actually bicycled or walked to work, actually their mortality rate went down 55%. And what's even more interesting is the people that, when they studied people, they would they clock them. They could actually predict who was going to die first, because the people that walked the fastest actually lived the longest. Just because you're out for a walk doesn't mean you're getting the same benefit from there. They actually found that they could actually, the people that walked the fastest was a 21% increase in lifespan. I think at 10%, that's about 7 years on average for somebody, just by walking faster. So if you're going to do something, walk with a purpose, get there quicker. If you're going to be out there, drag the dog with you rather than having the dog drag you. So fitness is a really easy one, and a lot of times what happens is that we think that this fitness is something that we have to do. Now it's like the exception, not the norm there. So have you guys heard of sitting is the new smoking? Right? If you sit more than 5 hours a day, it's equivalent to actually smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes on a daily basis there. That's what it does to your lifespan by sitting 5.5 hours a day. 5 or more hours a day there. And I always wondered why that was. And my first thing that I thought about was that you're literally sitting, most people are sitting like this for 5 hours a day, putting pressure on their nervous system, interfering with how their brain talks to their body, and their body talks to their brain, and how their cells heal, repair, and regenerate. And then what they found is that then after years they're in this position, they can't figure out why they don't feel any better. So that would be the first thing, is that if somebody's sitting 5 hours a day, they need to get adjusted on a regular basis to make sure that it's not affecting how their body's healing. But at the same time, your body literally, when you're not moving, your body starts starving for oxygen. Blood doesn't flow, and blood's job is to take nutrients and oxygen to those cellular tissues. And when you don't have nutrients and oxygen to your cellular tissues, they literally suffocate and they starve. So literally you're suffocating and you're starving your tissues when you're not moving. And when that happens is those cells die, and your cells can only replicate themselves so many times. So by not moving, their cells die at an accelerated rate. And we'll get to a point where then all of a sudden you lose the amount of cells that regenerate are less than the cells that degenerate are more than the cells that regenerate. And that's what aging is really the ability to replace healthy cells with sick cells. And that's why movement is key. We have to move every single day. And in fact, they found that if somebody exercises 30 minutes a day, just walking fast for 30 minutes a day, they live significantly longer than people that walk 3 times a week. And they live significantly longer than people that don't walk at all on a regular basis there. So think about this. This is one of my favorite studies. They actually studied people that were in nursing homes. And what they did is they asked them, like, what would you give up? Like, what would you give up just to feel good for one day again? The average person, 2 years of their life. They would give up 2 years of their life just to feel good for one day again. And that's scary when you think about it. Like 2 years, what's going to happen in the next 2 years? And so imagine if you just spent the next 2 years like just putting your head down and engaging in the 5 essentials and not making any excuses. Because here's the thing, I read probably 50 to 60 books a year, maybe more. It's at least once a week. My wife actually has me on restriction from Amazon right now. So it'll probably be less this year. But the point is that literally if I read those 50 to 60 books a year, and then I put them up on my bookshelf, and I don't take any action on them, literally that's just wasted time. Does that make sense? Like literally if you leave here and you don't take action on something, it's like literally taking this information, putting it up on the shelf, and you're like, look what I learned. Great, I can keep on doing the same thing. So the key is to be able to take 1 or 2 things, and I'll make the PowerPoint available to you guys because you were here. But the main thing is, just make sure you signed in. That way I know you're here, so I'll email it only to the people that were here. Because there's a lot of notes that I'm not covering that we just don't have time, and I felt like I possibly could, but it's not going to happen. But in our culture, movement has become the exception rather than the norm. Everybody's like, I went to the gym 3 times a week. Yeah, well, you should have been moving all week. So just think about how we can put movement into our exercise routine there. So the key thing is, like I said, the people that live the longest move the fastest. And what we find is that the long-term cardio is actually more destructive than actually short-term bursts of energy. And so that's why we have classes outside Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays where we do surge training. And if you do that, it's awesome. Like 12 minutes and you're done. That's what your body's designed for. And then in fact, like you can even, like if you can't stand up, all you have to do is move your feet like this when you're sitting in a chair. Or you can sit in the chair and you just punch for 30 seconds like this, and then, or 20 seconds, take a break. Punch for 20 seconds, take a break. Punch for 20 seconds and take a break. And then you just do that 6 times. And then, 6 repetitions of that, and all of a sudden you'll find that you'll transform like how your body feels there. That's why you look at the soccer players. They always have like great physiques. You know what I mean? They're always the one with 6-pack abs, and they take their shirts off and run around the field. Tennis players, because it's short bursts of energy there. All the athletes that have the short burst of energy, they're always in the greatest shape, and they actually live the longest there. So when they compare people that actually run long distance to people that are actually do short exercises, they find that the people that do short-term, high-intensity, short-duration exercises actually live longer. And in fact, there's a point with long-term exercise where it's actually damaging to the heart. It actually breaks down the heart. The heart's not designed to go run for an hour and a half every single day. It's just too much for it. So this is the big one, like I said, and this is the one that we really want to focus on, and this is really going to be my passion over the next month. That's all going to culminate in the detox process there, and the makeover that we're doing on the 5th. And really, what we're going to take toxicity, because we've never done this. We did it a decade ago, but we haven't done a full makeover just focusing on toxicity and teaching you how to see it and observe it, and talking about heavy metals and how to get rid of those things in your life there. And so that's the biggest thing that we can do right now, because unfortunately it's the unseen killer. You just don't see it. Like nobody really sees the toxin. But what we do know is that when they look at just air pollution, they're estimating now that it's about 7 years off of somebody's life based on the air pollution, the average air pollution in the area that we live right now. Just by that one thing, for the air that we're breathing in there. That's crazy. Imagine what it was like in the Spare the Air days down in LA in the 70s, right? Where it was like you see the smog that was going down there. I remember my wife said that she couldn't even go outside. They wouldn't even let her outside of the classroom because it was so bad. And so the thing is that we have these toxins there, and that's something that we can't avoid. But this is one thing, and I just really wanted to hit on this, because we talk about the fats, and I pulled up some really interesting things, but really recently a study came out when they looked at people 85 years or older with high cholesterol. Those people that had high cholesterol at 85, guess what happened to them? They lived longer. They lived longer. Did your doctor tell you that, by the way? They say statistically you're going to live a longer, healthier life with less dementia and Alzheimer's and hormonal issues and less cancers if you actually have high cholesterol at 85. So we want to make sure you have high cholesterol there. The researcher says, unfortunately, this casted doubt on the necessity for cholesterol-lowering therapy to prevent cardiovascular disease later on in life. Unfortunately, that's in Lancet. That's not my journal. That's their journal. Did you read that? Those whose cholesterol levels had increased since middle age, on average, were 32% less likely to suffer from dementia. See, your brain's made of cholesterol. That's what makes up your brain. So when we lower our cholesterol, it destroys the brain. In fact, there's a new condition that never even existed called statin dementia. If somebody's taking statins on a regular basis, they have a very high likelihood of actually developing dementia. I mean, think about it. If you go back a decade, right? If we go back a decade, like how many people did we know that had dementia? Right? Or like if you go back 20 years ago, like was dementia like a really big thing that we talked about? We had maybe like a crazy aunt that told funny stories and stuff, but now people weren't just losing their mind and forgetting all their beautiful life experiences and all the things that they've collected in their mind over their lifetime there. So this is what the researchers said. They said they were perplexed by the paradox, except that it isn't a paradox. LDL cholesterol, the one that we're so concerned about, the supposedly bad type, protects the brain as we age. And the rising use of statins can in part explain the increase in rates of dementia. Alzheimer's, when they studied these people that were aging between 75 and 94 years old, they found that the people that had the highest cholesterol between 75 and 94, they had the lowest Alzheimer's rate, they had the lowest dementia rates. Interesting. So when we take that step back and we get that 60,000 foot view, maybe we're doing something today that we think is the best thing that we can, but where is it going to lead us? And that's the problem with toxicity. Toxins on a daily basis, many times they don't kill us, but it's the accumulation of toxins over a lifetime that will have create the damage there. So really the one thing that when we talk about, just know that there's 100,000 new chemicals that have been introduced to our bodies and our homes in the last 40 years. 100,000 new chemicals. By the way, just so you know, your body was never designed to actually be exposed to those chemicals, and less than 10% of them have actually been researched, and very few of them have actually been researched to see multiple chemical sensitivities working together. That yes, we can expose you to one chemical. Do you react to that? No, but not even studying over the long term. But how about the average child is born with 286 known chemicals in their blood, in fetal cord blood, and over 40% of them are known carcinogens. The children are just starting out with these chemicals, and think about where we are. You know, the lead that we were exposed to, and the paints that we were growing up, and the antibiotics that we didn't know that we shouldn't be taking, and the DDT that was sprayed in the air that doesn't ever leave your body or your bones there. We literally are a chemical soup that's collected. So one of the big things for us on a regular basis is that we want to make sure that we detox there. And in fact, detox is not it's not a thing that you do, it's a process that you go through on a daily basis. Just like you detox your mind and your life from toxic people that make you feel bad. You don't just say, I'm just going to get rid of everybody I want. You're like, no, I don't like you, so I'm just going to get you away. So we need to start looking at our personal care products. We need to really, and we have what we call the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, or from our foods. And so those are big things to look at. And there's an app that you can use called Skin Deep, and you literally take this app to the store and you put it on the barcode that's on the product, and they'll give you actually a rating like how toxic that substance is. And you're like, oh, that's a 5, that's a 1. Maybe I'm just going to choose the 1 right now because it's the least toxic product. So then the next time you go to the store, guess what? You're like, well, I'm just going to buy what I always buy. And so the key is to have a plan, and that's why I really think that coming to classes and participating in classes is always a good thing because we learn things, but they also, my goal is for it to start putting questions into your mind and say, how do I do this? And I'm like, great, we have the resources available for you. Here's your action step on this. That's why we do shop at the dock, and we take people to the store and we go shopping with you. We'll teach you what to look for, what not to look for, and how to figure it out there. So when we look at our foods, obviously we want to be organic. We want to be pesticides free. We want to be non-GMO. Like 70 to 80% of the foods that the average American consumes right now are actually GMO foods. Isn't that weird? Like how is that possible? But we're just not aware of it. And so if we're not aware, whether we're aware of it or not, like I say, the police officer doesn't care whether you saw the sign that it was a 25-mile-an-hour zone or not. You're still getting a ticket. Ignorance is no excuse. When we look at water, like you can go online and actually look at the water safety in this area. And I got one of our friends was actually worked for the water district in San Jose Water District. Like, oh, it's great water, it's awesome stuff. And I'm like, well, what about the arsenic and the uranium in there, and like all these toxins that are in the water? He goes, oh, it's just small parts, no big deal. Well, you're taking a shower in it every day, you're drinking it every day, you're cooking with it every day. And in fact, that water, we can't even go fishing anywhere within 50 miles of here and actually eat the fish. So that's the problem. So making sure that you have a good water filter on there, making sure you have a water filter on your shower to make sure you pull those toxins out, because when the water's hot, they go straight into our skin there. Personal care products, I would use the Skin Deep app there. Household products is a big one. When we look at household products, like first of all, I wouldn't use a household product that has something in that you can't pronounce. Because basically it's the accumulation. In fact, they say that our households the internal environment of our houses are 100 times more toxic than the external environment in our world. In fact, I look at the cleaners that come to our house and they're now wearing masks, right? They're cleaning the house with masks when and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why are you guys wearing masks? And they had changed out the products that we had given them. Like, no, go back to my stuff. They're like, it doesn't work as well. I'm like, work harder. I don't want those toxins in my house, and we work hard to keep them out there. We got to fight for there. But really, indoor air quality. And in fact, I have one of our patients actually just is bringing back. He's just got approved. He's getting his first shipment of these little chips that go into your iPhone, and you can literally walk through your house, and it'll give you a toxicity rating in your house. It's the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my life. Like I've been coveting one since the first day I saw it. He literally he was in the car with his son, and he just turned it on, and he's like, oh my gosh, your air quality in here is horrible. And it's not that his son had eaten beans or something like that. Literally, his son had an exhaust leak, but he couldn't even smell it. Like it literally peaked the charts. He walked into through a construction zone, and you could actually see the pollute, like it was going up and down depending if you went into a room that was being painted or went into a room that had new carpets in it. It was really fascinating. So I'm trying to get him at the May 5th makeover there, because it's one of those things that I want to have, because I want to know. Like I literally want to know. We measure everything else about our house. Let's measure the toxins that we're exposed to. So this is a big one. Open your windows. It's almost summer. I know that pollen's out there and stuff like that, but let the air in there. Open the front door. Let it just blow through and clear out those toxins there. So I'm going to talk one last thing, and this is really important. And I want to touch on a couple things. Number one, obviously chiropractic. That's what we do. Like and I save it for last all the time, because I just want to remind you why we do what we do, why we adjust you, why you want to take care of your spine for the rest of the life. And I think the thing is that we talked about sitting as the new smoking, and the problem with that is that you're subluxating yourself on a daily basis. Now, there's 3 things that you can do to predict mortality, and there's actually 3 tests. And I save this, and I'll put this out for you guys. I'll just make a post on it. They said if you can, the first test is this. It's called the chair test. So if you can sit down in a chair without using your hands and come back up, the minimum amount of time for a woman is 36 times, and the minimum amount of times for a man is 39 times. If you can actually, in 1 minute, do the squat test there in the chair, and I think, what do they say? if you can perform these tests, there it is, you will typically live 13 years longer. Kind of an interesting way to check and see what the next 13 years looks like, huh? Second one is the balance test. You guys remember when you came in on your first visit and we had you lift your foot up like this? And then you stand on your other foot. What they find is that it's a balance test. If you can stand on one leg for 10 seconds, then you pass that test. And both legs for 10 seconds. The third one is the grip test. And I should get out one of my grip strength checkers, but basically if you can squeeze about 54 kilograms, and I can't convert that into pounds, but what they find, if you can do those three things, your odds of living over the next 13 years are almost 100%. So those are really important things, and it's a great predictor. But I also look at predictors, and that's why I talk about the nervous system, because we can actually predict who's going to live a long life and who's not. And the reason being is that there's something called heart rate variability. So what controls the heart, first of all? The nervous system, right? Like, it's not like the heart and the nervous system, it's the nervous system and the heart. That's what tells it to beat. And what they find is that when you have a balanced nervous system, you have a space right here, and then it's the time between heartbeats. So your heartbeat base should always be, the more variable it is. If you go to stand up, it should go up, and if you take a deep breath, if you have a stressful thought for a second, the heart rate should go up. If you have you breathe out, the heart rate will go down. It should be constantly doing this type of thing, very variable. And they actually, it's interesting, and I'll show you this in a second. The Framingham study that I talked about, that they actually debunked it, but there's the whole low-fat thing it's good for your heart. They actually had one little section on there, and they're like, and we also noticed something that was really interesting. We actually noticed, when they're looking at these people 40 years later, they said, we noticed the people that lived the longest, they actually had the greatest heart rate variability. And in fact, they actually, 70% of the people that had when they looked at them, this group of people that had they were the ones, this group of 70% had the greatest heart rate variability there. So this is what heart rate variability looks like. Frustration, this is a stress pattern there. You can just see it's doing this type of thing. It's staying in what we call a stuck pattern there. This is what, when they have somebody focus on appreciation. And you see the variability, it's coming up and down. It goes much higher there. You look over here, this is when somebody's feeling positive emotions when they're looking at heart rate variability. This is when somebody's feeling stressed. And this is kind of like what we feel like when we're feeling stressed. Does that make sense? We're like, "Argh." This is what we feel like when we're relaxed. What they find out is you have two parts of the nervous system. And so when your nervous system is stuck on in that stress response, you have very little variability. You're in a stuck stress pattern. And what they find with heart rate variability, this is what the Framingham study said, but this is 40 years ago. Heart rate variability will predict, when they look at nursing homes and intensive care units, they can predict who's going to live or die based on their heart rate variability. They literally can predict who's going to live or die. And in fact, when they study cancer patients, they find that heart rate variability is a better predictor of mortality than the cancer staging. You can have stage 1 cancer and actually have poor heart rate variability, and you're much more likely to die than somebody in stage 4 cancer that has good heart rate variability. Once again, it all comes back to the nervous system, and that's why I'm always going to talk nervous system to you guys, because here's the thing, when they looked at 70%, if your heart rate variability is off, they could predict at 70% of the time who's going to die first. That's back in the 40s. They have better technology right now. They can almost predict close to 90% of the time who's going to die first based on their heart rate variability. And it's not a new thing. So look at this. So if you Google heart rate variability research, 53 million hits, right? If you look at vaccine research, because we all talk about vaccines to keep us safe, there's about 56 million hits. So there's about the same amount of research. Did your doctor already ever talk to you about your heart rate variability? Was it a thing of conversation? Did they say, hey, we need to check your heart rate variability because it's going to be able to predict who's going to die first there? But I'm sure he talked to you about we have all this research behind us to show that you need to have that. Well, here's the thing. So that's 56 million. But if we look at vaccine safety research, there's only 5 million articles. Of course, he's not going to talk about the safety because he'll talk about, oh, it's safe. Oh, really? well, why don't you have him talk about this next time you see him, and have him test your heart rate variability if he even knows. And that's a big thing. We have to be able to look at that. But the last thing that I want you to see is that when we ask what controls heart rate variability, guess what it says? The nervous system. So if you look at somebody, your spine's supposed to be straight from the front, you're supposed to have 3 nice smooth curves. If it's degenerative, your degeneration equals the damage to the nervous system and the ability of your body to actually adapt to your environment there. That's what heart rate variability is. That's why it's so important. That's why we adjust you. And at what point do we want to stop getting you back to normal? I have never seen anybody with a perfect spine in all my time in practice. Not once. Like, nobody's ever walked into my office with a perfect spine. Like, we do everything we possibly can to destroy it. And the problem is we live a destructive lifestyle, so my job is to actually reduce the amount of damage and reduce subluxation, the term that we use for interference, to its most minimal form, and to keep you from and change your habits so you stop recreating the problems that created the problem in the first place there. So this is a really cool one, because this was like one of the first studies, when they look at people on heart rate variability, what they found, heart rate variability changed in patients that were as a result of their chiropractic care. There has never been a study on heart rate variability that they didn't have when people got adjusted, that didn't impact their heart rate variability in a positive way. In fact, there's never been a study when they actually study like the stress hormones, that when somebody gets adjusted, there's not one study out there that says it doesn't have a positive impact on stress hormones. 95% of healthcare visits to a doctor are for stress-related problems there. Like, that's why we look at the nervous system. I could talk to you, and in fact, if I'm the last doctor on earth, the very last doctor, there's not one left, and I could do anything. I could go walk into like any surgery center, I could walk into any pharmacy, and I had to take care of everybody, but I could only use one thing. There's not one medication that would take care of everybody's problems. See, like, health never comes from the outside, it comes from the inside. I would still adjust people. Not because I can't. Like, I can go to medical school if I thought that was the best thing, and then I'd figure out how to prescribe people, and great. There's a time and a place when I got really sick with pneumonia. Yeah, they saved my life. But that's not healthcare. They're preventing me from dying there. There's a difference, and we have to know the difference there. So I'm just going to run through two things here. I want you to see this X-ray right here. So which person, when you look at those two X-rays, do you think is going to live a longer life, just looking at those two X-rays? The one with straight or the one with a curve?
Straight.
Yeah, it should be completely straight right there, right? So you would think that, like, this person right here, pressure, like, what would their heart rate variability look like? What would their nervous system scans that we do when every single time you come in, what do they look like there? So why don't you come on up here for a second? I want you guys to meet Carol Ann. I know, you've been sitting there for a long time.
Thank you.
I know, I talked too long. I actually cut out 10. And I apologize, but I just wanted to introduce you guys to Carol Ann. And she's one of our champions right now. And this is actually her pictures right there.
Yeah.
And I want to just kind of, so Carol Ann had every single excuse. Like, she came in and you were on your walker right there. And how long had you been on there?
Several months.
Yeah.
Like 6, 7 months.
Yeah, and so she had every excuse. Well, I can't do this. I can't really sit on the wall with this there. And so and I asked her, I said, okay, are you all in? Because we can help you, but you got to do your part. And so we gave her home care exercises, and guess what she did? She's like, well, I'm going to do about what time in the morning?
4.
4 in the morning. Like, how dedicated are you to your health? And what I'd love to do is if you can just kind of share, just briefly, like, what kind of your process has been. And, you know, do you feel like you're aging, or are you getting younger?
Oh, no, I'm feeling, I get a little better every day.
Yeah. And what was the big thing? What was your big success? Would you say? What was the big thing that actually your mindset, what did you have to shift to be able to be where you are right now?
I think the biggest thing for me is that once I started and started progressing a little bit, is that I had hope for the first time in several years that I could actually get better and that I could live the kind of life I really want to live, instead of just adapting my thinking to say, okay, this is my disability, this is what I'm going to have to do, and I've got to change my view of the future.
Where were you before you started?
Where was
what did life look like before you started?
wasn't a lot of fun. It's difficult getting in and out of the car with the walker going everywhere, and when it's painful to walk, you don't walk much.
You actually came to one of our dinners.
Yes, I did in
and
December.
Then, yeah, in December. And then when did you start?
The first part of January.
Yeah, so like you thought about it for about a.
This is 3 months.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
It took years to get like that. That's just
Is that
like
the same person?
that's the same
That's
person.
me.
Yeah,
Both.
that's her.
I've been showing off my pictures to everybody I know.
I know. Some people have grandkids. She has her
I'm a
X-rays.
grandmother with my pictures to show everybody.
So let me ask you a question. So like you took everything, and we didn't like handhold you on this process. We gave you so you did you found out that the only time you could do your exercise was at 4 in the morning. Okay, you did it, and you got the reward there. And then you got the nutrition book, and we didn't cook for you, but you took it, and how much weight have you lost now?
Well, I started weight loss about 14 months ago. I'm 3 pounds away from 100.
Which is awesome. Which is
But I've only been able to continue, I think, because I have followed all of that. I learned so much in all that. I pored over those books, and so I've tried to do everything that is recommended, and I'm still what my sister described as it feels like a snowman losing, melting.
That's good.
So,
That's her new nickname. If you see her, call her Snowman from now on. So I just appreciate you so much, and that's for me. That's the reward is when somebody has the dedication to persevere. And you notice that it, like what she said, it was her mindset. She had hope. Like when you know what's possible for you, if you know that 115 is possible, if you know 120 is possible, then you start doing things differently. You find out a way. You figure it out. Because remember we talked about, like in one of our classes, we talked about if you're on a desert island, there's 2 types of people, right? There's the one person that sits there on the shore and they're like, oh, where's the boat? And then there's the other one that's like, all right, nobody's coming to save me. I'm gonna go find sticks. I'm gonna go build a fire and a signal fire up there. I'm gonna get food, shelter, clothing. Nobody's gonna come save us. Nobody's gonna save us. And that's the thing. We're the only ones that can save ourselves by taking action. So I honor you and I respect you, and I just thank you so much for being here. So I think.
I'm going to get there. Sometime you'll see me without this thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I actually already claimed it. Like she's borrowing that cane from me. So when you see it on the wall, you know it's mine. So I just want to talk to you guys about action coming up here. Okay. So the first thing is we have recipe night coming up next Monday night. So my big thing on recipe night. Last time we talked about juicing. We taught you guys how to juice. This time we're just talking about preparing. Like how do you prepare for, like, in this day and age where we're going, like how do you simply prepare and simple tricks and tools to be able to make like a whole food lifestyle actually practical? Like how do you prepare the foods if you have to go to work and then like most of us, like we just grab stuff at work. How do you prepare? Because preparation is the key to success, right? And so a lot of times the number one thing that I see is failure in the office and people that are trying to get healthy is they don't prepare properly. So then when they're confronted with the hard times, they crash. And they're like, I tried that, it's just impossible based on my life and how I do things. So that's why Recipe Night's all about preparation. We're going to teach you how to prepare. One of my favorite things that we do here is because we also come together as community. So the good news is because we're coming together as community, you actually live longer. Kind of cool, right? Just because that's what the research shows. Then we have community dinner, somebody brought Carol, Rand brought Carol Ann. Rand is the one that she was the one with the knee replacements and all the surgery, and she was the one that also decided that she wanted to go climb the pyramids in Mexico. So she decided to train by doing 1,000 squats a day. Well, she didn't start with 1,000, I guarantee you. Then she found a way. Like, do you know how long it takes to do 1,000 squats? She had to pretend that she was going to the bathroom throughout the day, and she would do like a quick 40 squats in the bathroom, and then she'd be at the copier machine doing squats while she's at the copy machine. But next thing you know, she's banging out 1,000 squats a day. That's just amazing. But it all started with one there. So this is how her transformation started. That's how Rayanne's transformation started. That's how most of our people's transformation in this office started, because somebody cared enough and they wanted them to hear the principle of love, life, health, and healing that we're talking about. So that's the community dinner coming up. I think it's on the 23rd. And then we have Detox Project. I started preparing for Detox Project about 3 weeks ago, so it'll be about a month and a half in preparation. It's one of the biggest things. We only have about 144 tickets available. It's going to be, we rented out a theater for that. It's going to be in, so make sure you get your tickets. I think right now, V, isn't it like the early bird right now? Talk to Vanessa if she's still here. I think she had to leave. Or talk to Katie. But the point is that we have tickets available, and I think the early bird goes for another 10 days now. So make sure you get your tickets, and we're really going to just dive into detox there. And then make sure that you get your Align Your Health book. We only have a few of them left. If you want one, let me know. We'll make sure that anybody that says they want one, we'll apply the discount when we get them in. It's really nice because it takes all 5 essentials. It's really like a Bible. It's a starting place on each of those essentials that you can build from. Good, I mastered this one, I mastered this one, I mastered that. So sign it, make sure your name's on the sign-up sheet. We have your email, so I can email you all the notes from tonight there. But the main thing is, don't put it on the shelf. Like, literally read it and just choose one thing that you're going to change there. Just know that your life is fully in your hands there. It's not what your DNA, it's what your actions are. The actions speak louder than words, and that's what your possibility. So I honor you guys for being here tonight. I will see you guys in 2044. We'll be having my golden anniversary in practice, and we're going to have a great time. So thank you guys, and I love you so much. I'll be here if you guys have any questions. Okay. Turn this off.